This is Real Relationships, where we talk about everything relationships. I'm Mickey Lavenpel, and I'm a marriage and family therapist and relationship coach.
And I'm Molly Livingstone, and I'm the comedian who overanalyzes everything. And on today's show, we're talking about...
How do you find the right one?
Ooh, juicy. How do you find the right one?
Oh, yes, it's a very easy question. It's actually, you could answer that in about 5 seconds or less.
What are you saying?
No, this is absolutely the hardest question.
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you.
This is the age-old question that everybody wants to know. It is absolutely as old as the beginning of planet Earth. It is as old as David and Bathsheba wanting the forbidden fruit. It is Romeo and Juliet rebelling against your parents. Every single romance movie that's out there is about how do you make this love thing happen. And unfortunately, there is no real answer.
Oh, good! I'm so glad they tuned in.
Yeah, so glad you tuned in. No, but we're gonna talk a little bit about all the different things that make love really difficult, and we're going to talk about all the things that you can do to make love actually happen for you and make it real and practical.
And I want to say, just as we're talking here, that if people have questions, if they have comments, if they want to challenge, if they want to be on the show, they can contact us at
realrelationships@jewishcoffeehouse.com. Everything that you provide for us only makes the show that much better.
And Mickey is a therapist, so when she says she loves to hear from you, that's literally her job. And you have all this knowledge and background, you research, you work with couples all over the world.
And singles.
And singles,
sure.
And people that want to date and all of that. So you really, when you're talking, unlike me, who's just kind of being devil's advocate or kind of representing the audience, you do have answers with research behind that.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so tell me then. Okay. Go, do it.
So let's just look at some of the different movies that we see, because I think a lot of us learn about love from watching movies, from watching TV. I know, Molly, you've said that I'm
obsessed a little
You are
bit.
Obsessed with The Bachelor and all those sorts of
and
shows.
And I like the rom-coms, even though I hate predictability, and I'd rather see someone end up alone. I think that, we all have a romantic side. We all have a jaded side. We're all trying to figure it out. Married or not married, single, not single. You're always still trying to answer this question of, am I with the one? Is there a one?
Right.
I think that's a really fair question.
But before we get to those answers, let's look a little bit at some of the movies that we've watched over the years. Gone with the Wind, where we see Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler, and obviously it's based on the book. Basically what we see in that movie is that her tempestuous nature really holds the couple together, but it's also what breaks them apart. And very often you'll see that in couples. The very thing that attracts a person to somebody is the very thing that makes the relationship break.
I've heard this.
Yes.
The things that you like about somebody in the beginning actually annoy you.
Right. Like, so what I've seen a lot with my couples is the girl would like the guy who is very practical, very grounded, very, he's got a great job and he's really holding it together, but they're together for a while, and then he is the most boring thing on the planet because there's not enough excitement, there's not enough juice, there's not enough zest, right? So that's an example of, where the very thing that you like is the very thing that you dislike. And conversely, you've got the woman or the man who's attracted to the carefree, wild, doesn't, never comes down to earth, loves the party, loves to jump from person to person, has loads of friends, but has very little time for him. That's a thing that he's initially very attracted to. Mm-hmm. And then eventually he's like, well, actually, I kind of want some intimacy, and she's not going to be able to do that for me. She's never going to be there for me. She's always going to be running off. And she's going to find him very boring because he's just too grounded. But we're kind of actually veering off of the main point, as we always do. We always digress because that's what we do. Because we're really talking about how you find the right one. So let's look at another idea.
Okay.
And this is from real life. Marie and Pierre Curie. I love them as a couple. I could actually very much relate to them myself because my husband's a scientist. And not only is he a scientist, he's a medical scientist. And I think for myself, I was very interested in my husband because I love brain science. I love picking people's brains. And my husband actually analyzes the deep little neurons and things that really make people's brains light up. Marie and Pierre Curie were driven to each other by their love and passion for science. And so it was their common cause that drew them together. Mm-hmm. And that's something that really holds couples together. That's something that really makes couples fall in love with each other, and that's something that keeps things really going and rocking hard. What's interesting is you could also see it as they understood the core the core values that each of them brought to their relationship. Like science was the thing that was so important to both of them. And I think that was why their relationship really stood the test of time, although sadly they didn't last all that long. He did die about 10 or 15 years before her. But even though he did die fairly young, her love for him was so strong that that sort of galvanized her passion for what she did. And she actually won a second Nobel Prize based on the work that they had been doing together when they got married. And I think that's very romantic.
That's so cool. I did not know that about them.
Yeah, well, I did a bit of research on them. And another example, just like that, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Now, they were cousins whose love and devotion to one another was so powerful that when he died, she was so devastated, she didn't appear in public for 3 years. Three whole years, yeah. And basically, she was going to get, fired, or people were trying to kill her and stuff.
Fire the queen.
I know. And then Benjamin Disraeli, he said, you better get your tuchus together, otherwise someone's going to, behead you or something. So basically,
He sounds Jewish.
I'm not sure if he was. I'm not sure if he was. I'm not sure.
I mean,
but he was
probably
English.
not, but...
Yeah, who knows? But anyways.
Sorry, that was a Jewish side note.
Yeah. But anyway, so she decided, okay, I don't want to die. And she took her passion and her love for everything that she believed in, and she made Britain the kingdom in which the sun never set. And so for the last 20 years that she lived after Prince Albert died, she put all of her energy into making England amazing. So that's another great example of how their love was so strong that even once he wasn't there anymore, she just really put her energy into something really positive, and she was really passionate.
But can I challenge you a second? So
sure.
How did she know, and how do we know that that's the one?
I think when it makes you do good stuff. I think when you just feel positive about yourself, and when you feel you're working towards something great. I think that's really a good sign. I think likewise, or conversely, I should say, when you're just down in the dumps, when you feel like you have to be something that you aren't, when you feel like you have to work too hard, when it feels like, actually, I don't know, I might have to take that back, because working hard is a really important part of relationships. It just is. But when it feels like you're not working towards something, it just doesn't seem to really work.
Was it Jerry Maguire, as I quote a movie, that he said, "You make me want to be a better man"?
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
And that happened with me every day. I realized that I was with my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. I wanted to be a better person, and as we have our marriage, it's also about being a better parent. So I think that when we're trying to figure out who the one is, you're right. It's not the one in terms of this chemistry, dying, passionate love that can eventually fizzle out. What you're saying from these examples is it's someone that is a spark that is sparking you.
Yeah.
It's not a spark between you two, but it's a spark that, because you have it within yourself, is something that you're both gravitating towards always, and you're sharing this together.
Exactly.
Is that it, Mickey?
You're building something that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it boils down to. And then there's all these examples of, the tragic stories, the West Side Story, the Titanic, the Dirty Dancing, the Grease. Those are all stories where the people can come from opposite sides of the track.
Yeah, totally.
That's another thing. That's completely opposite of what we were talking about before, where they didn't
Right,
necessarily shame. We don't know if they share the same core values because they usually die or disappear. Right. Or by the time you finally... The love finally hits, they have to die. One of them has to die, or one of them has to, or the movie ends and we don't really know how it finishes, or the Cinderella, or that kind of thing. So we know that there's something that's drawing them together, but we don't really necessarily know how it's going to pan out because their differences are so great. So they could swing in either direction. But where differences are the thing that draws the couples together, it's going to take a lot of work. It just is. And people just have to be ready and aware of that.
So you're saying that even if you are different, you can still also be drawn, and they can still be the one, despite cultural differences, despite being on the opposite side of the track, besides being on Montague and having, families that hate each other, which I think with Jewish people can also happen quite often. I mean, families and core values and religious backgrounds and cultural backgrounds can really have an effect on your own relationship.
Absolutely.
But then I digress. So for this episode, leave us with something wise.
So basically, the main thing that you want to think about is really understanding who you are. Because when you're clear about who you are, what you bring to the table, and what what you really want your relationship to look like. Have some sort of sense of what it means to be in a relationship. And that doesn't mean that you have to have an exact picture, about everything, but you want to have a sense of where are you going, where are you heading, and who would you like to bring along with you for that ride? What kind of person, what kind of values does that person have? And even if you have different ideas about how you're actually going to get there on that journey, just having a sense of this is my journey and this is where I'm going. For some people, it's making aliyah. For some people, it's having a big fat house somewhere. Could it still be in Israel? For some people, it's wanting to give a really good, strong Jewish education to their children. For some people, it's wanting to travel the world and see the world. For some people, it's all of those things. I think I fall into that category. I'd like to think.
Someone that has loves to eat food as much as me.
Yeah. Or, then again.
If people want to write in, if people want to make a comment, if people want to be on the show, if people want to challenge us, how can they get in touch with us?
They can contact us on realrelationships@jewishcoffeehouse.com.
And you've been listening to another episode of Real Relationships at jewishcoffeehouse.com.